welcome to Project V with Mr. Mohan. In this episode, we will be showcasing New South Wales as a destination for your next holiday. Starting with the brief interview with expert Mr. Paramjit Bawa, the country manager, Destination New South Wales. And then we'll showcase 10-day self-drive itinerary prepared by World Travel Studio for your SuperHit vacation.
Welcome to the Project V Travel Show, Mr. Paramjit. It's an initiative from the World Travel Studio to inform more about Australia to people who are planning a holiday there. So to start with, Sydney is the iconic city in New South Wales, and what makes it so irresistible?
Many reasons, and in fact 2 reasons, even before I say anything, come up straight away. We have 2 of the world's biggest and most iconic structures in the same city. The first one obviously is the Sydney Opera House, and the second one is the Sydney Harbour Bridge. And these are 2 icons which are recognized around the world, and they are instantly associated not only with Australia, but they are instantly associated with Sydney as well. So whenever I'm talking to a public forum, even before I say anything, these 2 icons will speak for me. But beyond that, Sydney is a very prominent commercial hub, so it attracts a lot of business visitors. We're a big center for banking, insurance, industry, have a lot of offices there. From the leisure point of view, we have throughout the year great festivals and events happening. These are run and organized by Destination New South Wales itself. One of the biggest happens during May and June. It's called Vivid. It takes place every evening for a period of 2.5 to 3 weeks, and we light up the entire city every evening with fantastic light installations and laser shows.
In fact, I was fortunate to witness Vivid Sydney.
You've been and seen it,
May.
So
it's really wonderful.
It's a spectacular event.
Around Vivid Sydney, there are a lot of shows which take place, and are they all free for the visitors, or you have to pay any entry fee?
It's a mix, if you are in Sydney when Vivid is taking place, there'll be a lot of stuff happening on the streets, in the pavements, there'll be a food festival going on, or maybe a music performance, or some street theatre going on. That's all free. But there may be some music concerts by, famous musicians or rock stars or pop stars, so you might have to pay a ticket. So it's a combination of both things. Throughout the year, every month, there is something or the other happening in terms of either sports or theatre or music, or there might be a flower show, or there might be a food and wine festival. It's always a mixture. Some elements of it will be free to experience, and some you might have to pay a little extra.
Great. For visitors from India, how many days you would recommend for stay in Sydney?
Well, we would like visitors to stay there for a month. Ideally, but we know that that's not always possible with leisure. Everyone has limited time, but I think just Sydney by itself would need at least a bare minimum of 3 days, bare minimum. But if you combine Sydney with some of the regional parts which people might want to experience, then I would say 5 to 6 days bare minimum. We now have over the last few years we've seen a lot of growth in the number of visitors who are staying for longer periods, a week, 2 weeks, 10 days. Why? Because they are, maybe they are hiring a car and driving through New South Wales to experience it as a self-drive, or they have been to Australia once or twice. Now they want to spend more time to explore new parts of it which they've not seen before. So we're seeing quite a lot of growth in that.
And which are the short side trips you would recommend that one has to do, apart from seeing what is there within the city?
When we set up the Destination New South Wales office in India, which was in 2012, we had already been doing some work in the market through one of our other regional offices in Southeast Asia. At that time, I think primarily the interest was Sydney, plus a little bit of Blue Mountains, a little bit of Port Stephens maybe. Over the last 5 years, we've done a lot of work in educating the trade, the travel trade, about what there is to see and do. So now we have destinations like the Hunter Valley towards the northwest of Sydney, which is New South Wales' main wine producing region. We have places like Port Stephens, which is also called the dolphin watching capital of Australia. And then we have also now started seeing growth in number of people going south of Sydney. Now we have destinations like Wollongong. You know, Wollongong is a really beautiful part of New South Wales. It's along the main highway which goes from Sydney to Melbourne, which is called the Grand Pacific Drive. And it's a very big center for soft adventure sports and adventure activities like hang gliding, skydiving, but it's just an area of great natural beauty.
People stay overnight in this place?
Wollongong is very close to Sydney. It's just about half an hour out of Sydney. So it is not a place where many Indians will stay the night, but it does have a university where a lot of Indian students study. So the relatives of those students might stay overnight in Wollongong. They might stay actually multiple nights in Wollongong. But it is on the way to other places like Jervis Bay. Now, Jervis Bay is a little more south of Wollongong, and again is a very big center for dolphin watching and whale watching. Very picturesque, and then a little ahead of it is a place called Kayama. And some of the beaches there which are on the coast have some of the whitest sand in the world, so they're very, very attractive for visitors. A little bit in the same region, a little bit inside from the coast is a small town called Bowral. Now Bowral is significant because it was the birthplace of Sir Donald Bradman.
Oh, yeah.
The great
the legendary cricketer. Yeah.
Legendary cricketer. Now in Bowral they used to have a museum dedicated to him, which over the years they have expanded. It is now the world's biggest cricket museum. It is known as the International Cricket Hall of Fame, and it is no longer just about Bradman. It is now about cricket. So, these are destinations that can be done as a day trip. We always recommend at least stay one night if you want to experience them properly.
Oh, is it?
Otherwise, you'll be rushed. You'll want to see Jervis Bay also. You'll want to see Bowral, the Bradman, the museum also.
So a week's time should be a decent window we are looking at.
If you want to experience
to both the
Sydney,
city and the surrounding areas.
As I said, 7 to 10 days.
Yeah, that should be fine, right? And maybe one can also take a trip to Canberra.
Canberra is accessible by air and also by road. You can, if you have the time, you can drive. So we have self-drive routes which start from Sydney. They'll go down the coast towards Wollongong, Jervis Bay, and then you can move in towards Canberra and then come back to Sydney as well. Or people sometimes also then continue their journey to the south of New South Wales. We have areas like the Snowy Mountains, which has the highest mountain in Australia, is in the Snowy Mountains. It's called Mount Kosciuszko. So we have those regions, and then if you want to continue your drive, you can go towards Melbourne. Or you can come back to Sydney. Or you can do it the other way. Now Canberra is connected. Singapore Airlines flies into Canberra, I think 3 or 4 times a week. So you can fly into Canberra and start your trip from there, and then come into New South Wales and then come towards Sydney. So yeah, Canberra is also can be included if required.
And which is the best time if you have to go to New South Wales during the year?
We have traditionally 2 peak periods for travel. The biggest one is the period between mid-November to end of Jan, and that is the Australian summer. We get visitors not only from India. From India, it's a very big season for honeymoon travelers. Why? Because the wedding season in India is October, November, around Diwali.
That's right.
Auspicious time to get married. So all the couples who get married, they go for their honeymoons, and Australia is a very popular honeymoon destination. New South Wales obviously will be part of that.
That's right.
So we get a lot of honeymooners traveling at that time. But we also get a little bit of family travel because of the winter vacations in India. And then another peak is our summer school vacations in India. April, May, June.
I know your passion for self-drive. I mean, you are a great connoisseur of taking road trips yourself. So which one would you recommend?
So there are 2 types of self-drives which we push in the market. The kind that start and finish in Sydney, and the kind that start from Sydney and finish somewhere else. You don't need a car to experience Sydney because of public transport and all the other things. But when you get out of Sydney, I think it's the best way. And so Sydney, towards the north, you have the Blue Mountains, the Hunter Valley, Port Stephens, and then back to Sydney. And you can come via the Central Coast. So the Central Coast is just on the northern outskirts of Sydney. We have a very big national park there called the Ku-ring-gai Chase National Park, which again is a very undiscovered place for many Indian visitors. And then the central coast is again very popular for adventure activities like horse riding, archery, four-wheel quad biking, that kind of stuff. So you have these to the north, and to the south you have self-drive itineraries which will take you to these places I've talked about: Wollongong, Jervis Bay, Kayama, and then come back via Bowral, or you can drive up to Canberra and then come back via Canberra. So these are what we call triangles.
Okay, so the circuit, I mean, you can complete in how many days?
So that's the beauty of it. These circuits you can complete depending on how much driving you want to do in a day. You can do it in 2 days, you can do it in 3, you can do it in 4. So it's very flexible depending on what you want to see, how much time you want to spend driving. The other kind of itineraries which are now becoming really popular are the one which I have done myself also is Sydney, and then you spend 4 days driving up the coast towards Gold Coast, which is in Queensland. And right next to the border with Queensland, we have a really fantastic destination called Byron Bay. You can catch a flight from Sydney which will take you about an hour, hour and a quarter to reach Byron Bay, but the best way to do it is to drive, because
and how long does it take?
Again, depending on how much you want to drive. When I did it over 4 days.
4 days.
But you can do it in 3, you can do it in 5,
Okay.
and each night you can stop at a different destination along the coast.
Okay.
And the Sydney to Byron Bay coastline is absolutely spectacular. There are places there which you can stay at any one of them and you'll have such a great experience. Port Macquarie, Port Stevens, Coffs Harbour, Byron Bay. This place which I just mentioned, Coffs Harbour, there is a small town next to Coffs Harbour called Woolgoolga, which has a very large Sikh population. And they have Australia's biggest Gurdwara.
Oh, is it?
So for Punjabis and Sikhs, again, that's a very popular destination. And it's on the coast. You have to drive past it if you're going towards Byron Bay from Sydney. And then Byron Bay is very close. It's right on the border with Queensland. So if people want to continue their journey into Queensland, they can just, Byron Bay to Gold Coast is maybe about a couple of hours by road, maybe less than a couple of hours. So it's quite close. And then you have another itinerary which we are now beginning to get a lot of traction with, which starts from Sydney and ends in Canberra or ends in Melbourne. So that goes via Wollongong, Jervis Bay, along the coast. So these are some of the really popular self-drive itineraries. I've done quite a few myself. They're some of the best that I've ever done.
Great.
Yeah.
One last question.
Sure.
What is the local cuisine one can have in New South Wales?
Okay, so again, one of the big misconceptions we had when we started working in the market was that Indian food is a problem. In Sydney, there are
plethora of
thousands of Indian restaurants. Wherever you'll go in Sydney, there are Indian restaurants. So Indian food in Sydney is not a problem, and people think that if you go outside of the city centre again it's a problem. It's not. So in every suburban part of Sydney, any area.
Is there anything local that one needs to try?
So just before I come to that, also to just say that even when you move out of Sydney, wherever you may go, Byron Bay, Port Stevens, into the Blue Mountains, down to Wollongong, Jervis Bay, you will always find Indian restaurants. So Indian food options will always be available. In terms of local cuisine, Australia is renowned for both its non-veg cuisine, and the tradition of the barbecue is really strong in Australia. Australia is known as the barbecue capital of the world. So lamb, chicken, beef, all of these, there are hundreds of different types of cuisines in using these proteins. But also Australia is very well known for its agricultural produce. Fresh farm produce coming out of the farms and into the restaurants for your vegetarian options, are really spectacular. And then there is the local seafood. So almost any kind of seafood that you can imagine, and it will be fresh, it will be beautifully cooked. There are hundreds of varieties of fish, lobsters, prawns, shrimp, crab. There's absolutely no end of variety that you can get. So what we've experienced is that most Indians, especially the repeat travelers, they are very interested to sample the local cuisine.
That's right.
There may be some meats which they won't eat because of religious or social reasons, but they will want to try the local cuisine. And even when it's vegetarian, there's a lot of options, and it's all very fresh and very organic. But they may also, every 3 or 4 meals, they may want to have Indian food.
Of course,
they
very
miss ghar ka khana, or they miss Indian khana.
Very right.
So if they want to do that, again, those options are there as well. Another meat which is particular to or unique to Australia is kangaroo meat. Very tasty, very succulent, and if it is cooked, well, it's one of the best meats to eat. Yeah. So kangaroo meat again is a delicacy in Australia. Yeah.
Nice. So on that note, we end this.
Thank you very much.
Thank you so much.
Thank you. Pleasure.
Friends, you heard the expert speak on why New South Wales, Australia should be on your holiday list. Let me take you through a 10-day tour of New South Wales that starts in Sydney and ends in Canberra, passing through Wollongong, Kiama, Jervis Bay and Bowral. Day 1, you arrive in Sydney, check in and relax after a long flight. The following day, drive through the city visiting the iconic Sydney Opera, Harbour Bridge, Sydney Tower, and in the evening enjoy the showboat cruise. We suggest you time your visit in May and June to coincide with Vivid Sydney, when the city comes to life with wonderful illumination and music festivals. On day 3, drive to the famous Blue Mountains and visit the nearby Joondalup Caves and Featherdale Wildlife Park. Begin your road trip to Wollongong today on the Grand Pacific Drive. Visit the Wollongong University and indulge in some adventurous activities like hang gliding and skydiving. Stay overnight in Wollongong. Today morning, drive towards Jervis Bay. Stop over at Kiama in Roo, famous for its blowhole, a natural rock formation that spouts seawater 20 meters high. Proceed to Jervis Bay and stroll on the whitest sand beaches in the world. Take a coastal walk and see the Cathedral Rocks National Park. Stay overnight in Jervis Bay. Today, enjoy the dolphin cruise and whale watching in Jervis Bay before proceeding to Bowral, which is also famous as Don Bradman's birthplace. An hour and a half drive from Jervis Bay will take you to Bowral, Don Bradman's birthplace. Stay overnight at Bowral. Today is the day 7 of your itinerary, where you visit the world's largest international cricket Hall of Fame museum and get to explore the scenic beauty of Bowral. On day 8, drive towards Australia's capital Canberra, check into a hotel and have the rest of the day at leisure. Next day, explore the city with a visit to the new Parliament House, the National Science and Technology Centre, Cockington Green Gardens and the Australian Institute of Sport. Today is the day of your departure from Canberra back home, or you proceed onwards to Melbourne to explore more of Australia. Just leave it to World Travel Studio to plan your New South Wales holiday, while I come back to you again with a new city and a new destination.